It is February 1st. We finally got over January, and I was thinking, you know what? I should maintenance this PC. I have a few ideas to put a few things around for that. So today we're gonna vlog the complete update on my gaming rig, which compared to Project Phoenix doesn't have a name yet. So maybe at the end of the video also come up with a name. There's a few things I don't want to change here, and yeah, I guess that's it. See you after the intro. Right, so the parts are actually still being delivered, but I wanted to continue and already test out a few things. First off, let's take a look inside for at least a few seconds so I can better show you what I want to do. What we see here is a non-modular power supply, which is also very dusty, and it leaves behind a lot of cables that I just don't need. They're also included on top of here. I mean, basically, of course, job number one is to take everything apart and de-dust it. Currently, they are fluid spaced on two fans in the front and one on the bottom, and they put it on in like this. Then we have, of course, the GPU here doing its thing, and on top we have one thing on the back, putting it out here, and of course two push and pull configuration blasting out on top. And that's basically it. I'm currently in my living room, if you can see here. This is like a very different backdrop. And the cool thing is, again, thanks to my setup with my iPhone being my camera and two movable LED lights, I can easily set this up here in the living room and can watch some stacked podcasts, for example, on the TV. So while that is running, I also have some fun on my own. And that's basically what I'm going to do today. Clean it all out, bring it all out, clean it up, and put it back together again with a few more things and tricks. Wow, I hope I made this work. I just noticed that I put my iPhone on the slow-mo recording mode, not the time-lapse mode. Meaning it recorded at 240 FPS, which is cool. And at the same time, it recorded at 720p and probably has a massive output of data right now. So anyway, I've taken everything apart of this case. I even take this mustard color cables, which will also be replaced. Forgot to mention that I have brand new black SATA cables, which will be very nice in this case because I plan to display it more. And clearly these have to go because they're not good looking anymore. Yeah, behind me is an assortment of my tech, and even like half of the cage will be taken apart. Even the bottom I have to take apart because I've seen it has so much dust in there. It's incredible. And yeah, a few more issues. It looks like this drive bay is actually fixed in place. And I don't know if I can take this bottom part out because the cage already is on its own rail. If I can take this out, there's literally no space for the radiator to fit in here. So the reason why I've taken everything apart, even the CPU and everything, is literally so that I can really work in this case without fear of breaking anything. So I really have to go in and take it all further apart even to see if I can mod the inside of the case so it is how I expect it to fit. And yeah, by the way, the drive bay, like the DVD burner, had it in there. I'm planning to take that out and put it in the server PC, and I actually bought an external DVD burner for the few times that I would ever use it again when burning my CDs for my DJ sets and everything. So yeah, we'll see. This actually fits in here, just doesn't hold on to anything, and the drives will be very loose in there. So I don't know if I want to do that. Maybe I can find a place to screw them in somehow, but that's going to be the challenge for the next hour or two maybe. Besides cleaning the whole shit up, because it's so dusty. Oh my god. I have never taken it apart to that level for 3 years, I think, when I installed the CPU cooler. It was even upside down, which annoyed a lot of people. And I get that. It should be, of course, the Corsair logo should be in the correct position. Correct position, goddammit. So yeah, continuing on. Talk to you later. Alright, and we're back after a short filming break. I did manage to clean most of the fans, like all of them of course. The AIO cooler, of course, that was dusty, my god. And most of the shell that's basically outside of this case. Still haven't managed to get the drive bay installed yet because I haven't, looked after that yet. First step was all just cleaning up the parts that we have here and remove all the dust in. Believe me, there was a lot. In the meantime, the upgrades arrived, and at first I was a little bit confused what this thing is. It's very simple. This is the external DVD burner that we have, and it has also Type A USB and a Type C USB, so you can even decide what you want to use. For example, I work on the MacBook. I could use that there as well if I ever were to use a CD on the MacBook, which rarely happens anymore, but at least I have the option to use that. Further on, we will swap out this SSD. This is a Toshiba one actually. It does look like a no-name brand, but it's actually Toshiba, 256 gigabytes. That will be replaced by this Intenso M.2 SSD, reading up to 520 and writing up to 500 megabytes per second, which is all I ask of it for now. I could have gone higher, but this costs around 30 euros, and I could have gone with, of course, double amount the savings, and of course even better speeds if I were to go, for example, with a Corsair one, which already uses, for example, the PCIe Gen 4 interface, but this is not about that yet. I wanted to have a cheap and quick upgrade, and this was also being to be delivered both on the day. I have this Isobox, cooler to put it on top of the M.2 drive so it won't overheat, which I don't really am afraid of that much, but as you know, why not? It just costs, I think, 5 euros to upgrade it with this, and in conjunction with each other and a good airflow in my case, I hope it will be fine. Moving on, I also brought this Corsair kit. I will only use this actually in the server PC, because these old SSDs will move over to that. I have no use for them in this rig anymore, because, let's move on. I have this two ScanDisk SSDs, which will be run in RAID 0 as my gaming drive. I don't use usually more than, I think, 500 gigabytes if I install a handful of games. Destiny 2, Rainbow Six Siege, and maybe Division 2 right now are on my disk, and that's fairly enough, but you can never know, and with the upcoming season of big games, and even later on this year, for example with Cyberpunk 2077, having an additional 500 gigabytes plus the combined reading speeds using RAID 0, I hope this will be a very worthwhile upgrade for just 120 euros together for both of these. And that will replace this Transcend SSD, which I think you cannot buy anymore at that type. I would have just bought a second one of that, but there's only like a metal cased one, which also costs like twice as much as these. So I figured, okay, why would I buy just this one while it's also in use for a few years now, and just start off with brand new clean ones instead. So yeah, the server will get the upgrade of around 700 gigabytes in SSD to use. I don't know, the small one maybe for the Windows part, and the bigger one maybe for local VMs for the Proxbox installation. I think this is a great update. Plus the HHD, these are already in that PC. So if you have not seen on this channel yet, I uploaded the full 4-video version of the Office PC Turn Home server, so you should definitely check that out. Oh yeah, and one last thing. These are the new SATA cables. This is a pack of 3. We have ones with just straight forward leaning, and then we have the ones with 90 angle degrees connectors. Of course, very useful, and again, not master colored. And one last step for like 5 euros, I have this pack, of, I don't know what they even call it in English. Basically, you put them on your power cables and you use them to straighten them out and make them look much nicer. So combined with that and the new power supply, which I can only show you from the back right now because this is a sticker with my address on the front. That is the Corsair RM850, a gold series rated power supply, which will replace the 751 that is not modular. This one is modular, and I'm very much looking forward to that, especially because it has the nice cables, which I will use then in conjunction with these, I call them braces now, to update. So yeah, I will now begin the process of putting everything together again slowly, and hopefully getting also everything installed the way I hope it will work. So let's go with that. That video may be a bit too dark, but whatever. It is finally done after like 8 hours, admittedly with a break in between. It's sort of done. I gotta say I'm not as happy with the cabling as I hoped it would turn out in the end. Though there's some cool changes which I'll show you in some close-ups. These like braces like really are not working with this kind of cable. I probably need to buy like premium cables which are, you know, not braided like these, that have a little bit more, you know, free flow. So then they look really cool. This is sort of like proof of concept of working in here with the graphics card. Another shame is that this is also not working as fine, you know, with just 4 threads, but it's actually running with 5 threads from, or even more, from the PSU towards the graphics card. You can see even closer here in the HDD cage that it's actually working a little bit better if I have them with one in between 3. And of course, yeah, all the black cables, they do really wonders for this PC, like leaving all the mustard out, definitely cool. There's one huge change that I did actually. The reason why I don't use the DVD burner anymore is with the use of the M.2 SSD, we lose 2 SATA slots on this motherboard because it's not that high end. And the other 4 that are still usable here are occupied, of course, by the 2 SSDs on the back and the 2 HDDs that we have in the front here. I was going to change these out as well to also have, you know, for editing purposes, like 2 terabytes split on 2 1 terabyte drives, again used via RAID 0 configuration, and then have like different sections for recording, editing, and then storing videos in the meantime. For long-term storage, I still have other solutions then later on. So yeah, it's been a long day. I actually threw out my back and I can't really stand right now much. So I'm just gonna plug this one in, hope everything works, and then gonna do installation another day because I really am tired. Please forgive me if it's not that detailed today. Nonetheless, spending like the 240 euros that I did on this new upgrade will hopefully be worth it in the end. Again, these braces really not worth it if you don't have proper cables for them, so save yourself the 4 euros that you would spend on that. But other than that, I'm actually very pleased how it turns out still with how it looks. If its turnout is completely black from the inside. But yeah, nonetheless, time to prove everything is still working, and I hope it does, because if not, I am gonna be very worried. It's something very interesting. I have more, Jesus. I have so many screws now left over, and I have no idea why. I used to have one of the front fans being directly connected to power, basically run 100%. There's this connector which I have not used anymore. It's like putting together IKEA, but in the end you have like 10 things left more than you would expect. So it's gonna be interesting if everything works. Nonetheless, everything's connected. So the top here has 2 hidden fans. One actually would not do much here because it's standing here and there's no exhaust port here. The one that's in the left here, in the behind, is actually more useful, of course. So we'll see how it does. It did work well like this for years, and this magnetic RGB cable is falling off. With these, controlled again by the AIO. We have this one, chassis fan, this is chassis fan, this is chassis fan, and yeah, we should be fine. All right, everything's connected. Pump is on. I see lights on the GPU at least, so wish me luck. Okay, something hitting something, and I don't like how this sounds. Alright, just a quick shot to show that it's actually fine. I had a screw that was a little, bulged up into the area where the top fan is. The screw is actually holding the AO in place, so of course with this intricate system you need a very flat screw. Alright, now back to software configuration in the next part. Alright, so it's almost 2 AM and I did some testing and I crunched the numbers and I came up with what I found was actually a good way to compare each of the different drives with each other. Currently we have an M.2 SSD by Intenso, 240 gigabytes, a RAID 0 2 SSD based, 480 times 2 gigabytes SSD collection by Toshiba. And on the HDD side we have a WD Green one with 2 terabytes and a WD Red with 4 terabytes. What I'm just comparing is how the old setup fights against the new setup, and it's quite interesting how the old setup wasn't that bad. Starting out, if we just compare, of course, the reads with each other, the standard sequential reads and writes are actually fairly, how you would expect them. The green, of course, isn't as good as the red one, but especially in the random section, instead of the sequelized one, the WD Red HDD, of course, beats by a large amount the WD Green. If you compare the two C drives, the Toshiba SSD with 256 gigabytes versus the Intenso M.2 SSD with 240 gigabytes, we see in the sequelized ratings, we have in the reading section actually that the M.2 SSD is better, but in the sequelized writing, they're almost the same actually. In the random section though, there's a good difference again. We see that the random reads is better on the old SSD, and the random writes, it's better on the M.2 SSD, so it's completely swapped. And thinking how it is, I think I prefer that the writing aspect of the M.2 is better than the reads, because for all intents and purposes, I do use the C drive, of course, with Windows and everything for lots of purposes, for random caches and writes in between, and I think the writing speed definitely helps, of course, in that aspect. Now let's get to my D drive where all my games are stored. I doubled the space and made it a RAID 0, but was it actually worth it? Well, if you just go by the crystal mark benchmark, we see, well, kinda. Synchronized reading Q8, the RAID 0 configuration is faster, but in the Q1 we have the standard Transcend SSD just being a little bit faster. In the synchronized writing we have the RAID 0 being faster again, but in the Q1 on the other side the standard single SSD was a little bit faster. Though we have to say the differences are really marginal, they're not that big. In the random aspect though, that's where it's getting really interesting. That's where you see the Transcend SSD just moving past, of course, the RAID 0 configuration by a large margin. Though I think again here, reading is more important than writing, and hopefully this happens when loading games in the sequelized mode, and that's what I'll see tomorrow when I play some games actually with the new setup. Maybe I'll rework it a little bit. I'll see about that. Last but not least, I wanted to compare all the SSDs overall from the benchmarks, and if you just summarize all the numbers, we see that the new Intenso M.2 SSD overall is faster, or has just more points, let's put it at that. Then we have the old Toshiba standard SSD, which was my old C drive. And then we have actually the Transcend SSD, where my old games were on. And then overall, with the points being the lowest, we have the Toshiba based 2 SSD RAID 0 configuration. But yet again, the points are not that drastically different. It's going to be interesting to see how RAID 0 will change my, of course, user behavior, and how I'll experience, of course, gaming, and how load times will run. But it definitely shows, if you switch from a single SSD with comparable same numbers to 2 SSDs in RAID 0, the difference isn't that much bigger, at least based on these crystal mark benchmark numbers. Overall, there's at least a trend if I see the complete comparisons of all 8 categories, that the M.2 drive actually has some more points, at least in many writing aspects and reading aspects. And with that, I'm gonna leave you for today.